Oh, it's been a long.
So, welcome everybody to the World of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gomer, and I'm a podcast assistant here, and I'm excited to bring you another show or another episode of Workability uh, with our friend Neil Weber. That we do every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Central, and um. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to uh, Neil and Kurt to kick us off today. So welcome,
Thank you.
Neil.
Thank you so much, Emily. Appreciate that. Welcome, Kurt. Appreciate you, your joining the show. Just wanted you to give us an update on what's going on in America related to Social Security disability benefits and how that impacts the average person on disability.
There we are getting technology situated here. So as they're waiting here,
My screen says your microphone is muted, your video is stopped, so we got a problem.
All right, so we all ready to go, folks?
yep. So Neil was asking you about if you want to give me an update on what's going on, Kurt.
What's going on? Just 1 second here.
They are waiting for Kurt to get his technology and going here. If you're
Yeah.
interested in being a guest, just let us know.
Yep. All right, so we're all set, folks. Just trying to overcome a little connection issue here. We're all set to go, ready to roll. Welcome to Kurtoberfest. It's Guten Kurt here, and we're ready to talk about the nation's business. So we're seeing this trend in decision and administrative action by our federal government to cut down quite handsomely, really doing a gutting of what we've been used to with, Medicare and Social Security and, with special education and, all the things. So we're at a new day, date, and time for Americans with disabilities, and it is time to rethink private public partnerships because the public element is scaled down on the federal administrative side. So we have to figure out how we're going to fill that. And at the same time, you know, really engage businesses at a larger scale than ever before. So so it's all fun and games, folks, to be in the business sector, be proud to be Republican, and to say, we support our, Donald Trump and, oh, how he's saving taxes and cutting costs and, just really doing away with services and, making bold decisions and, really bringing us to this new place. But, I call for putting that in check in terms of, what is the end game to this? What are we looking for in the end? What does this mean for our Americans with disabilities looking to be gainfully employed or sorting out their ambition to be employed? So, we're kind of in this day and time where, in the government spectrum, we're finding a palate and an appetite by a lot of our voters out there to really let Americans with disabilities suffer and go for survival. That that really, if you chop down what Americans with disabilities get from an agency perspective and really take away the benefits and get them really uncomfortable, maybe Americans with disabilities might get motivated to get working if they don't have any upside, to not working and actually for survival, for food, shelter, clothing, just basics to get that in any way, unless they're fortunate to have a cash cow with their family, gonna have to go out there and survive, or go homeless. I know in the homeless, houseless, element, it's always been a thing, even with enjoying where what used to be with Social Security disability, what used to be with, Medicare, what used to be with special education, we still were suffering from a great faction of people who are homeless being citizens who, also have a disability. So having homelessness and the profile of having a disability being right there together, showing up that there's a correlation. So now we're on the scope of work, getting a paid job, being a blue collar worker, whatever type of worker is realistic, for someone with a disability to have. So really the scope and the value of this show, just skyrocketed. What do you think about that, Neil? That this show you've put together has become quite timely because Americans with disabilities need help, to sort out what's going on in the workforce. What do you think, Neil? Neil Weber, while you're muted.
Again. How's that?
There we go. You're back.
Yeah,
Live.
well, I think that the opportunity for the person with the disability should be that they should be able to work part-time and contribute to the economy so that they can earn enough money to provide food, clothing, and shelter for themselves. Unfortunately, I believe the Trump administration is not providing that, and I don't think that's fair to the average worker.
Yeah, really, Neil. I mean, I think that President Donald Trump did this nation actually a big favor because what's going to happen, or what is happening right now as of last week with all the news of, 9 days ago Friday and everything through the last week and all of the press, Donald Trump loves his press. So he's got a lot of people, there's a lot of citizens in the US with their ire up, get the Irish up, so there's really a time of revolting, percolating out there around the country, and it won't take too long. And this is going to be just really, really nasty. It's really nasty because, we were driving down the road here locally, and we were going under. There was an overpass, a walkway available over the expressway. And what were we reading by a couple of our citizens there? They were holding up signs, "No kings." So
Yeah,
the
I've seen that
idea,
myself. I've seen that in limited numbers, but I've seen that 2 or 3 at a time on Wauwatosa in 76. And people honk a lot, and people are very much in support of that.
yeah, so that's what's happening is, President Donald Trump has really put citizens to the test to really say, how much are you going to take before you get in the face of your assembly representative in your state, your senate in your state, your county board of supervisors, um, to him in the Oval Office, to, House of Representatives in Congress, the Senate of Congress. What is it going to take to really get this nation rallied? Like he knows he can rally people, like he got rallies together for his presidential race. And, this is him just being the Wizard of Oz and causing this yellow brick road experience that, you know, it's just really a test. It's a challenge. It's Donald Trump saying, "Here I am," like you might look at it like the king of the nation, and I'm ruling over all of you, hundreds of millions of people. Here I am, Donald Trump. I'm one man. I've got workability. I took on the job of president of the United States. I, Donald Trump, took on leader of the free world and everything. And look at what I can do. Look at what I can do. So now it's a time for every person in the country to ask themselves, what can I do? What should I be doing? What am I doing for this nation? And it's really akin to the story of decades ago where there were people in California that got fed up so much at our federal government, they drove from California. These are Americans with disabilities, by the way. Americans with disabilities several decades ago got in their vans and all their vehicles and went on caravan coast to coast, took that few thousand miles of a drive and got to the state capitol and led all the other 49 states to rally to say, no more. We're putting a hard stop right here. And whatever you tell us, unless it means rights for our American with disabilities today, we're not leaving. And they just persisted because they were sick and tired of the can being kicked down the curb. And we're right there, worse off than that. Worse off than that, because right now we have this flux, this pendulum that's swinging and moving, and nobody knows where it is. So when people are confused, they don't do anything. People aren't going for jobs because they don't know the ups and downs of what it would mean to get employed, to get a job. So people aren't acting, and they're suffering, and they're complaining. They're making signs, no kings, and it's just a hodgepodgery of venting and, primal instincts to say, none of this is good. I don't like it. And I'm just going to be pissed off at one man, and that man is Donald Trump. What do you think about that, Neil?
Yeah, I agree. Are you talking about the 70s? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that basically, you know, that there was a whole organization. I'd have to look up. I mean, it's all told as part of the story of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So
Okay.
there were milestones that were accomplished that brought us up to 1989, to get to the point of where it passed our Congress and all the things. So yeah, in the 70s, and then that carried forth all the progress made with all the representation throughout the time. And then it eventually, like with ADAPT, so there's a story about ADAPT that then becomes a successor to that whole thing of, the folks from California coming. So then that led to ADAPT, like getting out in front of buses and, all this stuff to make sure that the Americans with Disabilities Act, would be passed. And there's a movie about it. There's Crip Camp, is a movie out there to, kind of see what people with disabilities had to do to organize and to get all of the disability agencies, like all the national entities, all the vendors, like the Wheelchair Association, Wheelchair Manufacturers Association, and all the stuff. They got together to be one ginormous force. And really, the story of the Americans with Disabilities Act is that the gentleman that consulted Tupperware, actually, with my wife, having a Tupperware distributorship, is kind of interesting to see her take off with Tupperware. At the same time, I learned about Justin Dart, who was a consultant for Tupperware. He had a lot of clients, Tupperware being one of them. And then he and his wife became, you know, a major force in the private sector coming from the business sector to speak up for the Americans with Disabilities Act. And, you know, the thing with the Americans with Disabilities Act that, you know, 99.99% of our country doesn't even know at the present time, you know, that it's really our veterans that made it all possible. Because what George H.W. Bush did is he took the whole military and veteran component to really speak out, and it created a political message to say, hey, you know, we send our citizens over to fight our battles in military. They come back injured, and then they can't get into your office, you know, because they end up living the rest of their life using a wheelchair and all the accessibility equipment and all that. And you know, so back in the 80s, you know, all the advocates for ADA were able to point that out, that people with disabilities can't get into the office, which was one thing. But then once they looked at the veteran component, that is what had political clout to say that the legislators didn't want to look like an idiot, you know, voting no for the Americans with Disabilities Act because they knew it was affecting the veterans. And that was going to be their legacy, is that they voted against the veterans. It really was the vote for the Americans with Disabilities Act wasn't truly a success for Americans with disabilities. It was a success for our injured and wounded veterans. That's really what it was. And most people don't know that. Did you ever hear
Yeah,
that?
I wasn't aware of that. So that's great.
Yeah, so these are the historical points that need to come out today, because you know, I would propose that Donald Trump doesn't even know that story. I'd like to talk to Donald Trump right now. Hey Donald, you know, this is what it is. You know, this is what happened, you know, with your predecessors, you know, and this is the groundwork that you have just dismantled for our country.
Hmm.
Because he doesn't know what he's doing. This is completely his disability. His disability is his ignorance on the whole realm. I mean, there's stories told about in his personal life, you know, relatives he has and things like that, that he should be very supportive to, but his reputation is about not being supportive to even his own family in this area. You know, so he's never had respect for people with disabilities. So he's got people so inflamed on Facebook. He's getting comments about our citizens would love to put him into the position of having a disability and then see how he feels. And that's a little bit of their mantra. You don't get it until you've got it.
Yeah.
So he's got his citizen base wanting to put him in the position that he has a disability, whether it's from their violence or whatever it is. That's how they feel.
Well,
You
that's
know, so
sad, and I'm sorry for him, but yeah, that's the way it is.
yeah, so the idea is it's something we all have to share as an entire country, as you know, whatever shy of 400 million people, you know, between the 300 and 400 million range of population, you know, we have to take ownership as a collective, Americans with disabilities included, all of our Senate, all of our Assembly, you know, our Supreme Court justices, the whole shooting match. Everybody in our country should take ownership for this development, because it was percolating and it was temptation that was hanging there for supposedly political advantage for President Donald Trump. But I think this is going to be the biggest devastation to his whole presidency. I think this is going to be talked about for the next 800 years, about how President Donald Trump did this.
Hmm.
He's ignorant, you know? So I guess that's the best he could do, is plead ignorance, because he clearly doesn't know.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so the idea is with workability in this show, and the idea of the, you know, the best focus we can have in our country is to get with the faith groups, to get with the nonprofits, the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, the educational sector, and figure out what we're going to do now that the public schools don't have the leadership and the administrative resources at the federal level, which means the state level and the county level is all going to peel back too, and even locally within districts, it's all going to be peeled back, because it's a trickle effect, a trickle down administrative economic reality, trickle down economics, and this is all going to the deficit of, gaps that have been filled, and now they're going to be hanging there as gaping, wide open voids and gaps in how we need to build up our human resource, because that's the element. If you talk to human resource associations, and you talk to the folks that make hiring decisions, what you hear all across the land is there aren't enough workers. There's a worker shortage. So what sense does it make to undercut our development of a human resource that can fill the jobs created in the workforce? And people with disabilities have really proven a great track record to be great employees. You would agree with that, Neil, right?
I would agree. Yes, I've been one of them, and that's great. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know the answer, but I think the answer is maybe the next administration, which is what, a couple of years away, will offer a instead of turning to AI, turn to training individuals in skills so that they are qualified for the workforce.
Yeah, so one thing we need to accept, Neil, is that AI training is going to keep growing and growing and growing. That's just gonna be the sexiest thing out there for many years to come. It's almost like Facebook, where Facebook was such a big deal because it reached numbers that made it the third largest country in the world. And AI really is not anything that spectacular in terms of the history of technology and engineering, and all of the wonderful things that are out there evolving us in the technology space. AI is just sexy. It just really is attractive. It's just really, it's like that collision along the side of the road where people can't help but take a look. So that's what's happening here. Is there's just so much buzz about AI, and people are responding to it so well that there are a lot of innovations being born out of the guise of AI. And again, not because it's any big secret sauce or the big deal it's ever been touted to be. It's just another program. That's all it's ever been. But it's been marketed so well, and it's been such a buzz, and just the notion of it to be like human intelligence. And it's like when robotics became such a big deal, and we started to see robots being integrated into producing cars, and then how humans got so upset about being replaced by robots in auto production. AI is in a similar industry disruption, that it's going to find its place, and it's going to be a software literacy requirement to be functional in the workspace. Because for a company, it's going to be a matter of, if somebody is a candidate to be hired and they don't understand or have a proficiency with AI, for a lot of desk jobs. I mean, obviously, when you're sitting there at a computer and using software and doing data entry and all those type of clerical things or administrative things to produce reports, or in media to produce videos and graphics, and it's just so powerful what AI can do. But I appreciate your point, Neil, is that while there's this big craze about AI, we need to make sure we're not missing out on the people, the personal touch, to be like, we can't get around in industry, in manufacturing, that's going to take people to produce the products that people are bringing out to market. And then in terms of customer service and in terms of the human touch, there's nothing that's going to be able to replace that. And actually, people with disabilities stand to, be at an advantage. There's a lot of appeal for, how people with disabilities have a focus on the human touch. And there's actually people with disabilities that actually have an acumen for technology. So people with disabilities can win in both directions: the advancement of technology and the sorting out of what in the end will the role of people be, because people with disabilities show up with work with a lot of love in their heart, with a sense of joy that a lot of other people miss because they get so enamored with, superficial things and stuff like that. So people with disabilities are really good to help keep us in priority about what life really is about. And to be able to bring that into a team in business, or to bring that into the workforce, is a tremendous treasure. And at the same time, Neil, you make a good point about, let's focus on vocational rehabilitation, which means help Americans with disabilities reach their fullest employment potential. Right, Neil? And Neil, you're still muted.
How's that?
There you go. You're back. You're live. Welcome back to your show.
Right.
Yeah, so right now, we're deep into the show, perhaps at the tail end of the show. I don't know how much more you want to do, Neil, but I
Yeah, I
think
think we're
we went
we're at
down
the
a
tail.
rabbit hole. So now what do you want to do? We're deep in the hole. Are you at conclusion, or do you want to sort out a few things first before
I think
we?
we're at conclusion. I would really like to end it with the belief that we need to engage the workforce in vocational rehabilitation, and that we need to empower the individual worker to do that. And I think the individual worker, when they face the fact that they may lose benefits, I think they'll wake up and say, well, maybe I don't want to lose work benefits. Maybe I should go back to work and work as many hours as I can.
Yep, I totally agree, and yeah, and I call out there for, again, all faith leaders, volunteers in faith groups, the whole NGO market, the nonprofits, the educational sector, folks in the civic space that, are there being a part of civic activities and do its civic duties that, aren't done by the, staff of government. And, the whole business sector, all employers, all the fun things we do. And you talk about hobbies, pastime, leisure activity, travel, sports, recreation, all the things. When you say, you work to live, I want everybody to think about what they do to live it up. And to ask the question, how good is the organization, the entity, the business where I go to live it up, whether I love golfing, or I love water skiing, or I love to travel, or I love to go to music events. Look around, pay attention, think about the relationships you have. People with disabilities are 1 in 4 people. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. So for every 3 people out there that don't identify at all with, having a disability, or knowing they don't qualify for disability benefits, those 3 people should be asking, where is that person with a disability that should be in our friend group, should be on our team, on our sports team, should be in our band, should be doing what we're doing. Is that really happening with the organizations, group, congregations, however we assemble together? Do we have that 3-to-1 ratio that says we are melded together and we are unified with our American disabilities? Because I would propose that 3 out of 4 times that is not the case. So if you are in that place where it is not the case, that 3 out of 4 times, or for every 3 people that don't have a disability in your activity, in your opportunity, in your project, in your event, whatever it is, make sure the people you're with know. Like if you're one of the 3 that knows that there's not that one to go with your 3 that is your friend with a disability, tell the other 2 and tell the group so that everybody can have this. That's what we need. We need this clustering of 3 people that aren't as much on the disability community side of it, to make themselves available all day long, every day. I ask all day long, every day, like I'm going to do right now, what have you done already today? What are you doing now during enjoying this live stream, enjoying this video, while you're enjoying World of Ability? What are you doing during this time? And what will you be doing later today with a professional with a disability, with a blue collar worker with a disability, with an employee with a disability? What are you doing all day long, every day that way? And when you realize, oh my gosh, I could go a whole month where that's 0, just really ask yourself, are you breathing life into the future, or are you breathing death into the future before you? The power of one. You have the power to enable and let this destruction and this dilapidation and dysfunction continue, or you have the choice to make a corrective effort and to voice up and say, what if? That's how so many things got started in our country, is one person going to another or a few or a group and saying, what if? Please be that person, and let's steer the future of this nation for work and employment for Americans with disabilities like our country has never seen before. And a big shout out for our friend Tim Terosian. We believe he's absent right now because a couple hours ago he was announcing us his excitement to meet with a prospective business partner. How exciting is that? So let's consider that. How many people in our country want to be like Tim Terosian and cultivate and set and show up for a meeting with a prospective business partner? With that,
Amen.
Emily. Oh, Neil, go ahead.
Amen. Let's close it with that.
There you go. So, Emily, you got the trailer for us. You're going to represent the World Ability Podcast Network, Emily. What do you got for us here? I'm sure there's an announcement about how we're here every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Central. Take it away, Emily. Make sure we finish this off right. Take us out of here, Emily.
Thank you for the conversation, Neil and Kurt, and we're here every Sunday at 5:30. So if you encourage everybody to tune in and or join us for the conversation every Sunday at 5:30. I guess until next week, hope everybody has a safe and productive week.